About a dozen years ago, I had a series of near-death experiences with a group of ancient Native American masters that indoctrinated me and gave me basically not just a reason to continue to live, but also an understanding of why we're here. And they had a very specific message to give everyone, which is the book that I ended up writing called The Handbook. And it is really just a simple little handbook that you can open up each and every day to give a connection to ancient wisdom and to connect us really to the frequency and the understanding that we're supposed to be living on.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode, How I Made It Through. And today our guest is David Cobb, and he and I are already talking and we're having just such a fascinating conversation. I'm really excited for what he is bringing forth. I'm actually going to do my best to stay out of the way and let his message come through. So David, handing it over to you to share who you are and what your message is and what informs your messages. So handing it to you.
As you said, my name is David Cobb. I was a film and television producer, a professional athlete. I had an incredible life through the majority of my adulthood. But as a very young boy, I was able to talk to the other side. I had visits from my grandfather when I was 5 years old after he passed, and I had the ability to see the other side. And it sort of kept it at bay. And about a dozen years ago, I had a series of near-death experiences with a group of ancient Native American masters that indoctrinated me and gave me basically not just a reason to continue to live, but also an understanding of why we're here. And they had a very specific message to give everyone, which is the book that I ended up writing called The Handbook. And it is really just a simple little handbook that you can open up each and every day to give a connection to ancient wisdom and to connect us really to the frequency and the understanding that we're supposed to be living on. What's happened is that we've taken our mind and we've closed it down to this idea that we just live once. And we got one roll at the dice, and whatever really happens, happens. And it is so far away from the truth that if you stay within that understanding, you actually subtract yourself from all of the power and all of the messages that the universe would try to give you. So what I had explained to you before is each time that I do one of these, I sort of get an understanding from the ancients about what is the concept or what is it they want to convey in this individual interview or podcast. And for them, it was a focus on the understanding the dynamics of reincarnation into our everyday present lives. It's just something that we have abandoned completely, trying to play this game of you only live once and no big deal. It just goes on. And yet every single thing that happens to us is connected and connects back to reincarnation. Now, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so I was saying that is a very timely one for me in particular, just for some things that are up in my life and exploring my own past lives and those of people I love. For those who might be tuning in for the first time, I'm assuming if they're tuning into this show, reincarnation is not a new concept, but for some context, how often have we, typically speaking, reincarnated? How many times? Anything you can share about that?
Yeah, there's a million different paths we can go for many, many hours. But the simplest, I would say, one of the teachings that they had given to me is that they tried to explain to me that if you took all of the lifetimes that you had and you had a little balloon for each lifetime, you were a farmer once, you were a doctor once, right? And you put them into a larger balloon, you would have one large balloon with 50 little mini balloons inside. That is your soul. That is who you are. You had those 50 different lifetimes. Now, what happens when we choose to incarnate is that we'll take 2 or 3 of those previous lifetimes, the one that was a farmer, the one that was a doctor, maybe the one that was a nurse, and we bring them back into a new incarnation with those 3 lifetimes remembrances. And the purpose is to then refine those 3 lifetimes that still had lessons left to be learned. Now, that explains why someone at 5 years old can be a concert pianist. because one of their previous lifetimes, they were a concert pianist, and that's one of the lifetimes they're reenacting in this incarnation to better. The whole purpose of incarnation is to better ourselves, is to refine ourselves to become higher within the spiritual understanding. And by doing that is we finish the lessons and the experiences that were unfinished from previous lifetimes.
And that's karma.
That is karma.
Mhm.
But karma is both positive and negative, and karma is both earth karma and soul karma, right? The earth karma is if you cut somebody off as you're driving through traffic, someone cuts you off. Real simple stuff back and forth on a very sort of pedestrian level. Soul karma is that you agree in a previous lifetime to live another lifetime with another person or another purpose and then that ends up showing up in the incarnation in a much larger way. A part of this understanding, I can only give it to you sort of as an example. I had my first marriage was with a woman that I was very attracted to, very connected to, but within 6 months of always being together, we would basically want to kill each other.
Mhm.
And we couldn't quite understand it, and the connection was so deep and
Yeah.
so incredible, right?
Yeah.
And yet the dynamic was so destructive.
Yeah.
And modern psychology and such will just say, "Well, you have these issues and those issues." And it wasn't until many years later, as I started to go through my own teachings and they started to connect all of my experiences and explain to me what had happened, that I truly understood what had happened. My first wife and I had shared together a previous life in the 1500s. And we were a brother and sister, and our parents were had passed very early. They had gotten, back then, easy to get a communicable disease, didn't live very long, and we ended up sort of raising each other. And we had an incredible close relationship, but never intimate, never past being brother and sister.
Mhm.
And so we actually, as souls, agreed to do it again, but in furtherance of our previous relationship, take it to the point that we weren't able to experience before. And so when I met her in this lifetime, it was an immediate connection. Within 24 hours, we moved in together. I
Yeah.
mean, just we knew it. And yet it wasn't meant to be forever.
Yeah.
It was right. And this is where we all get so confused. You're like, well, how can you have this incredible intensity? How can you have this incredible connection? And yet it's not meant to be in the present.
Yeah.
It's not just dichotomous, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And the second part of that was that she was incredibly gifted in terms of helping me in that previous lifetime and furthering me and helping me, succeed. And so not only did I agree to come back again and share an intimate relationship with her, but I promised to help her in this lifetime the way she had helped me. And when I did that, when I helped her, and we then had the intimate relationship, our relationship was actually over.
You completed what you came to do.
Correct. And that's what we don't understand about reincarnation is that these connections that we run into are so deep and so powerful. And we try to analyze them and figure them out. And yet you have to get to the core of why you have this connection with this person and what is the purpose of that connection.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what we're all missing. And then we'll go to psychotherapy and we're talking about our childhoods and how to communicate better and
Blah,
how
blah, blah,
right.
blah, blah.
And how to
So,
push it and push it and push it. And so many of us, it's interesting, two people I love dearly are in toxic relationships that have made them, and I know you know a lot about this, so sick that I worry they're going to have premature deaths because they're not willing to walk away from the relationship
well,
and
they
learn
are.
the lesson.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
They're not willing to move on.
Yes.
And so there are no new experiences to be had. If you don't finish this, you can't go to the next. And you're
Yeah.
exactly right. That's exactly what illness is. It is the inability to get past an experience.
So I know you want to talk about reincarnation and the your you didn't call them guides and I didn't write it down. How do you refer to the ancients?
The ancients, yeah.
The ancients. Okay. Um the question I have is around children, babies who
Mhm,
get sick.
mhm.
How does that connect? Because, and you can share this, and I hope that you do, that illness is really a communication
Correct.
that we are living out of alignment and we
Correct.
need to pay attention and correct that misalignment.
Well, it demands change.
Demands change.
Illness demands change, and illness not will not go away until you agree to the change.
Mm.
So, I make over 120 different natural remedies, and when I get sick, I do not get an intuition of to take any of them. The first thing I get is to stay silent for a number of days until I get the message of what it is that created the imbalance, what I have to do to agree to get back on track, and only then do I have an intuition of a physical remedy that I could start taking that would start helping me physically heal.
And so it's the remedy that you have meditated on so that you can have a deep connection to knowing why,
It's the energetic acknowledgement.
the energetic acknowledgement, and it wakes you up to your life that what needs to change that you weren't changing.
Points out the imbalance, exactly what you described, right?
Okay.
So you suddenly start to drink a little too much, you start to eat bad food a little bit too much, you start to not exercise, and you do it for a couple of months, and suddenly you get sick.
Yeah.
So we reach for a drug or something to stop us from being sick, but instead, if we were to simply be silent and sort of wallow in our illness for a few hours, we would out of nowhere have an intuition that says, you have to change this. You have to go back to your normal diet. You have to go. It happened to me really just 6 months ago. I hadn't gotten sick in years and I was down for a number of days. And it
Mhm.
had to do with my attitude, actually. I had started to get a little bit frustrated and I started to cast some negative aspersions. Something would happen and I would go, oh, that's stupid. And I started to condemn things
Mm.
just out of normal frustration.
Yeah.
And that made me sick because holding that negative energy, at least in my body now, not good. Can't have
Yeah.
anything negative near me.
Yeah.
So as I'm sick, I think, well, do I take silver? Do I take one of my honeys? Do I take nothing? My intuition says nothing. So I stay in bed for about a day. And at the end of the day, I'm about to get up to do something and it hits me. I went, think of what you've been doing. The last couple of months, you started to get condemning of things. Light bulb went off. I said, all right, I will go back into balance. I agree to not be negative. I agree to not condemn. The moment I made that statement, I thought, oh, there's this one silver that I make. And if I put it right here in this spot, and within 2 hours, I was healed.
Okay.
So it's that no matter what the remedy is, it won't work until you do the spiritual work first. The physical
Yes.
remedy won't even show up as a possibility in your mind or in the possibility. That's why cancer patients don't get cured. That's why all these things keep coming back because we don't deal with the underlying spiritual problem, which
You know, it's interesting. We have a frequent guest, and she does soul journeying with people. She goes into the Akashic records and she
uh
downloads a lot of information. And she calls it emotion. She's not the only one, but she calls it emotional clearing to say you wouldn't, have someone come and clean your house and then go for months and months and months and months and never put away the dishes, never dust, never vacuum. She said it's our responsibility to recognize all our thoughts and our feelings or beliefs, especially when they're negative, painful. They start to, I call it, issues that get stuck in the tissues, like they energetically get
stuck
lodged.
in the
And
ethereal body,
in the ethereal body and in the physical body, if we're not
which then
clearing.
clogs the physical body.
Yes, so she has some exercises to daily. She says it's your
Sure,
responsibility. You need to
sure,
clear them
sure,
spiritually
sure.
so that you are not weighed down by toxins on, spiritual, emotional, psychological, physical level
So
as they
the
manifest.
the big illnesses come in when we have a traumatic event, a serious event that we really cannot understand.
Yeah.
And we take it and shove it into the ethereal body, telling ourselves we'll come back to it when we can handle it or when we can figure it out better.
Yeah.
Well, that impregnated experience energetically in the ethereal body, left unchecked, as you describe, for many months, starts to affect the physical functions where it is physically
Mm.
heart, throat, wherever you stick it. And then it starts to manifest in the physical illness.
Okay, this is so fascinating. So I'm imagining that our listeners are saying, how does he know this? He mentioned NDEs, near death experiences. Can you go back a bit more to the origin to share when you started? I know from a young age you could talk to the dead,
Mhm.
but when did this really, like, what was the catalyst for this knowing that you're describing? And what was it?
So 12, 13 years ago, 18 years ago, I had bought some land in northern Arizona, a few hundred acres, with the idea, ever since I was very young, to create what I thought would be a healing center. Had no idea what it meant, the definition thereof. I just knew. And so I had looked all over the country. As a entertainment guy, I was traveling 100,000 miles a year. So look here, look there. Took me 10 years. And I found this sacred spot in northern Arizona. Within a year of finding this sacred land and buying it, I became violently ill and incurably violently ill, allergic to all Western medicine. Just give me aspirin and I'm in the hospital,
Wow.
bleeding internally.
Oh my God.
And after a year of trying to heal myself naturally, I had this experience where I was up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep for more than 3 or 4 hours because my blood was so toxic that it would back up. And so you'd have to walk every 3 or 4 hours
Oh my
just to be able to
gosh.
sleep again. So it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm walking in Toluca Lake in Southern California at night. And I see out of the corner of my eye this Native American step out of the bushes from across the street. And I'm thinking, yeah, I saw that. No, I'm not looking over. I want nothing to do with this. And I get about 2 more steps forward and I can feel he's right there. And I turn and sure enough, he's standing right next to me. And he looks at me and he says, "You do know what's happening, don't you?" And I said, "No, I know I'm dying and I'm sicker than crap and
Mm.
I want." But and he cut me off and he said, "No, we're making you into a shaman." I said, "A shaman? I don't even know." Boom, he was gone. I said, "Well, I don't even know what the hell a shaman is." So I went home at 1 o'clock in the morning. I looked it up. I went, "Well, that's not what I'm interested in," and didn't pay
Mm.
attention to it. And went another couple of years healing myself, starting to make medicine. And then it happened where I woke up. It was midnight at New Year's Eve 13 years ago. And this 10-foot tall ancient spirit was standing at the foot of my bed. And all he did was stretch his hand out to me. And I thought, because I've been seeing, the dead my whole life, I thought, God, thank God I got high ceilings. This guy would not fit in here at all, right?
That's funny.
Completely, right? Sacrosanct. I mean, no respect whatsoever.
Oh my God.
And I've been sick so many times now in these few years and trying to figure out, and he just reached his hand forward again. And he said, "Look, I'm going to come back to you in a few days and I will tell you everything that we're going to do and teach you and blah blah blah." And boom, he's gone. And I thought, well, that was pretty crazy. I went back to sleep. 4 hours later, I woke up. I was sicker than a dog. It was coming out everywhere. And for the next 10 days, I thought for sure that was it. Wasn't going to make it. And I just started to heal. That night, he showed up again. And he's standing at the foot of my bed, 1 o'clock in the morning. I just went, "No, no, 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 no. You go away. Last time you were here, I'm just starting to heal." And he
Ah.
reached his hand out again, and I knew there was no way. So I touched his hand, and immediately we started flying. And we flew back to my property. And we landed just like in cartoons where you're just kind of and you're running. And I remember walking with him that first day saying, "What are we doing here?" And he explained to me that this was sacred land. And what I had done in buying this land is I had created an entrance into their sacred world. And if I was going to be the purveyor of this land, if I was going to be the shepherd of this land, I was going to be made one of them. And that's what I went. So for the next 13 nights, every night he came, stretched his hand out. We would fly up north and he would teach me. He would give me these lessons for hours at a time and show me, start to make medicine and connect things. And at the end of 13 days, he came to me and said, "Look, I've given you a chapter of a book every night. I want you to write. I've given you all these teachings. For me to come down to this level and even communicate with you is a once in a million opportunity. I will never be able to do it again. You will never see me again." And he was gone. But there were 11 other ancient natives with him at the time. It was a circle of actually 13 that I then joined. And so the other 11 is what I join on a regular basis and have communications with them, but not Father, not the large entity. So with that, they gave me my marching orders because I one night took my rights and they listed them. They said, "We want you to write this book. We want you to protect ancient plants. The earth is going to go through an incredible upheaval. And we have, unfortunately, the risk of losing some of the most important medicinal plants that exist on this planet. We want you to build this farm protecting those plants. And then we want you to have other people around the world learn how to make their own natural medicine from these plants that you are protecting. And they can start their own little natural healing centers around the world. And no matter what happens in the world, when pharmaceutical drugs crash, when all of these things go away, we still have our natural medicine for our population."
What a responsibility, man.
Well, so we go back to the beginning where you were like, why did I have trepidation in coming out?
Yeah.
Who wants to come out here and say, "Oh, by the way, I talked to God and
Right.
he said," no.
And you are very steeped into, Western culture with this very acclaimed career and
Right.
reputation. And here you are going, hi, everyone. Little bit of a divergent
Yeah, small crazy,
track.
small crazy. So I it happened now 5 more times that I went through these 13-day experiences, and Father never came again, but the ancients would come in mass and they would start to connect things in my life and teach me. So when we talk about that previous lifetime experience I had with the first wife, they taught me all of that. They said, "Look, you see what happened here? Do you see what happened here? This is the reason that it happened." So they continued to give this to me, but their main thrust was for me to write the handbook and to get it to the public. And the reason that was is because much like, I don't know if you're sure you read Illusions by Richard Bach,
Hmm.
Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, right? They said the handbook is identical to those other two books. They are written by masters. I just channeled it. I didn't write it. It's channeled by masters and it's written in such a way that every time that you read it, you will get a different message. You can read the same sentence in the same paragraph every day, and it will mean something to you different every day. I call them magical windows. And what they are is masters are able to take simple words and put them together and create opportunities of spiritual enhancement, right? And you kind of go, well, what? For instance, we take 4 words: watch the dog run. Hit your brain much? Not really. How about reincarnation is the most important thing? Now your brain starts to think. The same, just 4 words, 2 4 words next to each other. One will make you think for 2 hours, one doesn't make you think at all. That's what they understand words can do. When they're put together in a simplified form, they become multidimensional and multi-purposeful. And if people can read them each day, they can connect to that frequency that keeps them on their path and keeps them in balance. If you
Mm.
simply took the handbook, Illusions, Game of Life and How to Play It, every day just read one paragraph, your life would change drastically in simply a week because you would connect to the frequency and the way of thinking that takes you out of negativity, that takes you out of all these commonalities that you have.
Yeah.
We're not being instilled with the right vibration of thought. You watch television, it's a lower form. You read things, it's a lower form. You talk to people, all they care about is their Mercedes broke and they can't get it fixed properly. It's all lower forms of thinking.
Yeah.
When you connect to the higher thoughts, of thinking, like simply have compassion for everything that lives, suddenly you start reacting completely different to everything and everyone.
Mhm.
Be- what they've taught me in the last just year is that we think that ancient wisdom is written down in a book somewhere. It's not. Ancient wisdom is in ethereal energy. So life force is a force. It's not a book. So when you're given ancient wisdom, it doesn't come in a book. It comes in an energetic force. So when they would have me channel, they would simply channel the energy into me, and I could see the words coming into me like a typewriter.
Wow.
And then I would have to wake up, run down, and just write it out, write it out, write it out, write it out, and then I could go back to sleep.
So this higher vibration, I mean, it doesn't take much to look around and see there's so much low vibrational thinking, feeling, and believing happening. This sort of hypnosis of greed and anger and judgment and all those things, right?
Selfishness, all individualism.
Selfishness. Yeah, individualism, rather than recognizing that we are all divinely connected and
A
having love
and
and
only a
compassion.
community can survive.
Yeah.
Only a community survive. And so when I go back to the original concept about reincarnation having so much impact on all of our thought, if you remember that this is only one of 50 lifetimes that you've lived, you will react differently to every single thing in your life for the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
When you look at a child that's 6, you don't think he's only 6. You think, well, he's 6 this lifetime, but what did he do in the previous lifetimes? And you'll actually treat him differently.
Right.
You'll recognize that a tree is completely alive and growing and talking. You'll stop for a moment and ask him how he's doing.
Mm.
Sounds crazy, but that is when you are actually, I call it holding hands with the universe.
I love that.
When you're actually connected to everything around you. When you do that, all of your actions and reactions will change.
Yes.
And you say, well, what shifted it? It is a vibration that shifts it. It is a frequency that shifts it.
Okay. So I have two questions because I love that and I've experienced that. For me, it can be hard to sustain.
Correct.
Right? And so 2 questions come up. One is about why do we come here in this sense of forgetting that our essence really is love, and we can get so seduced by this low vibrational thinking, feeling, and believing.
Right.
And then also
Well,
what so
stay there.
stay there and then I'm gonna ask you something else.
So when you take those 3 of your 50 lifetimes and you come into this incarnation, you don't in this body remember the other 47.
Yeah.
So you have purposely dumbed yourself down.
Yeah. I mean, we don't remember the 3. I mean, so many people are like, "This is it."
99% don't remember any. Correct.
Yeah.
So you have dumbed yourself down. Why? So
Why?
that you will be present in this experience, right? You agree to come into this lifetime to learn humility, and you bring back a couple of lifetimes with you that were very humbling. You were a maid, a wait, whatever it may have been, right? A
Mhm.
servant. But you can remember a previous lifetime when you were queen, and you know it doesn't have to be this way. Well, you're not going to participate. You're not going to participate at all. By having a limited perspective and a limited memory, it forces you into just concentrating on the mission you came to do. It's the only way that you can experience this level is with a limited perspective. Sounds strange, but that's how you connect to it. Again, if you had all 50 lifetimes memory, you wouldn't have the same perspective and you wouldn't be able to learn from it. And some of it is karmic.
Yeah.
You know, the first 18 years of my life, my parents were incredibly bombastic. My father was a terrible alcoholic, physically abusive, all of these terrible things. Now, why did I live 18 years of such torture and madness? Well, my direct previous lifetime in the 40s, I was actually a film and television producer, and I was not a nice guy.
Mm.
I had abused my power and my ability. And so I came right back into this lifetime with that lifetime, and I suffered exactly what was done to me for 18 years, what I had done to
What
others in
you
previous lifetime,
perpetrated.
so that I could not just finish the karma, but learn from my mistakes, learn from what I had done to others so that I would not do it again.
And it feels so I'm being a bit of a I just get curious. So I understand that in the abstract. And yet it feels like so many people don't learn and they go to the wrong sources. So they go to the doctor, they go to the psychiatrist, they
Correct.
go and they're getting information that may be well intentioned, maybe not.
But it's
And they're getting
incomplete.
it's incomplete and it's not
Yeah.
helping them to learn what they are here to learn,
Of course.
right?
Of course.
So of course, so then we're kind of stuck in these patterns like, a hamster on a wheel
W
feeling
we have been.
we
We have
have
been.
been. We have been.
We
But
have been.
now there's this sort of some people call it an awakening, a
Correct.
shift. Say
Correct.
more about that if you would.
Well, that comes from the planetary influences, and I don't wanna go too deep into it, but very simply, what the Mayans understood is that every 52,000 years, our solar system in the universe does a complete circle and comes back to its original point. That's how long it takes for our solar system to travel around the circumference of the universe, because everything's moving. Everything's moving around us, we're moving around the universe.
Mhm.
Every 52,000 years, we come back to the same point we started. What we don't understand is that as we move through the universe, there are planets, solar systems, and other galaxies that influence us differently every 20, 30, 40, 50 years. In the last 2,000 years, we were in a part of the galaxy where there was nothing else around us. No other galaxies, no other planets. That's why we would believe there was only 11 planets.
Mm,
We couldn't see anything, right? And 2012, what the Mayans understood is that we were going to come back into a part of the universe where suddenly the rest of it all showed up again. All the rest of the planets and galaxies, but all of their energy and frequency of higher wisdom would start to hit us again, would start to permeate the planet and us as a species.
got it.
So we are finally back in a position in the inner universe that we actually start to accept the light again. There's no better way to describe it.
Right. Right.
Because 7,000 BC, the Atlanteans were completely evolved,
I was hoping
and the
you'd mention
Egyptians
this.
were sort of a little de-evolved from them, the Greeks a little from them, and right at zero, when the Romans, boom, we moved into the darkness. And if you look at healing, the Greeks had Asclepian centers. 300 healing centers around ancient Greece on sacred land where you would go for 4 to 6 days, music, learn how to make herbs, take baths. And on the night of your healing, you would go down into the sacred sleep chambers, and a physician would attend you through the night, and you would speak to your soul to hear how to heal yourself.
Mm,
That was the principal healing technique for 400 years in Greece until Aristotle.
mm,
They didn't even do autopsies anymore. They said the soul has left. It's a waste of time.
right.
Aristotle brought it back. He said, no, 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 no. This soul stuff, nah, nah. He got rid of all of Plato's understanding of soul healing, went back to autopsies, and we went back to pretending we're just a physical body that only
Materialism.
lives once.
Yeah, this materialism. Yes.
Complete de-evolution. But because our planet no longer was getting the frequency and the energies of the higher wisdom from the rest of the universe, it really was a dark ages in a dark corner. So with that, we can tell since 2012 how things have shifted, how things have started to illuminate, wake people up. But they've also created this huge division, which is what the ancients talked about.
Yes.
You are either left or right. There's no middle
No in
anymore.
between. Yeah.
You're either working on evolving or you're working on stealing and criming again. There's no right? And that is because we are going to Mother Earth is about ready to kick us off.
Okay. I'm hearing it called a reset.
You sure, but it really is an Armageddon and not physically. It is mentally. What do we fight for?
So many of my guests have said this.
We
So it's
fight for our thoughts.
yes, yes. And it's really of this spiritual, emotional, mental space that we inhabit.
Correct. Correct. And the reason that we've also declined so much is all this internet and all this nonsense. We've allowed people to go down the wormhole and disconnect from their own intuition of knowing what's right and what's wrong.
Right. Well, it's, I talk about it a lot, but it's this we've got two energies, these polarities, love and fear. And the wormholes are always directing people towards fear,
Here.
right? But
But
people might be very, when you say things like Armageddon, that also might feel like doomsday and scary and fearful. I know that's not what you're saying though.
no. But we say Armageddon because it's so impactful.
Okay.
Because they are trying to take our minds. They are trying to really enslave us to whatever it is that they want. Because none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
Money and all this, it's all just such nonsense. It's hysterical that people pay attention to these things.
Yes.
But by keeping us enslaved in that way, we don't think of the larger things. We don't think that we have power to manifest things without money. We don't think that we have the power to manifest anything.
Yeah.
If we don't go to a job and get a piece of paper that then allows us to go to the store to buy the thing that we want, we don't exist. And do you really think the creator made this planet for that?
I know. How does one, though, but we do need money in the practical sense, how does one reconcile and live in this world, but help to elevate towards what the creator wanted in the midst of, you know, I need a home and I need
Correct.
clothing and
Correct.
right?
And we understand all of those things. Um,
Hmm.
the greatest thing that they did for me is this year I did 16 healing podcasts. And each one is on a different topic, but all within the same form. And it was pure channeling. I had no idea what was going to come out each time. And they came out completely structured.
Mm.
And the first four: do not pay attention to time, do not have negative thoughts, do not count money, and do not live in the future.
That's really hard, David.
I know, I know, I know, I know. But when we talk about being practical, right? When I got out of film school and started as a director, my job as first assistant director was to run the sets every day, 12 hours a day. I decided what we shot, when we shot it, ran the entire crew, was responsible for making the movie every single day. Now, you think a guy like that would be worried about time. I didn't wear a watch ever. And anytime someone worked for me for the first time on a movie and didn't know me, it's the first thing they talked about. How can the first AD not have a watch? That's all he's responsible for is time. Because I moved into having an intuitive clock.
Yeah.
Simple. I knew when it was time. All right, we got to move on. We can't be on this scene anymore. We got to move on to the next scene. It was time. So it's not that you can never look at a clock. It's that you have to develop your intuitive clock.
That makes more sense because we live in a world where you're like, I have this appointment at this time and I have this meeting at this time and I have to
Correct.
pick my kid up at this time. So, but
Correct.
you're saying don't be a slave to it. Tune in. It's so funny. I'll ask my mom, I'll say, are you hungry? And she goes, well, what time is it? And I
Correct.
go, why does that matter? Is your stomach
Correct.
empty?
That's the most exactly right. I'll give you a pedantic experience, right? I was making remedies for a couple of people, and I had a feeling it was getting close to 5 o'clock, which is when the post office closes. Now, in the past, even a year ago, my logical brain would go to look at the clock and then make a decision what I was going to do next. I said, no. Intuitively, I know I have to stay in this space and finish. And if I'm late, I'm late. I don't care. Then I'll shoot
Mm.
them out tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. So I finished everything up, got it all boxed up on the 3 orders, and I looked at the clock, and the clock said it was like 5:02. And you know what I did? I drove to the post office because that's how it felt. It felt like it didn't matter. So I get to the post office, I drive in, it's 5:10, 5:11, been closed for 10, 11 minutes, can't get in. And I just stopped for a minute in the parking lot, and I see out of the corner of my eye the gate open up. And here comes a guy coming out with a big basket that's coming out to the drive-through mailboxes to empty them. And he happens to be the assistant manager who I know. So I roll down my window and I go, "Tom, how are you?" He goes, "Good. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I was trying to drop off packages." He goes, "Well, can you drop them 3 inches?" Took him out of my car, dropped him in his basket.
Okay.
The post office was open for me at 5:15. My logical brain would have never allowed that to happen. You see where I'm going?
Yes.
If you are a slave to the clock, if you are a slave to thinking about the future, if you are a slave to counting money, you limit all of the other opportunities that could possibly happen.
Got it.
I wouldn't have
Got
gone to the
it.
post office logically because it was closed,
Right.
but intuitively, they said go. And what happened? There was a guy waiting for me in the parking lot to take my packages after hours,
Because you were tuned into that frequency, you were available to that
holding
wisdom,
hands with the universe. Yeah.
holding hands with the universe.
If you connect to
Exactly.
everything around you, you get to use everything around you.
So, how does one cultivate the practice of tuning in? What are some of your suggestions to?
So that's where we go back to those four. You can't pay attention to time. You can't count money. You can't live in the future and you can't have negative thoughts. If you could do that for just 24 hours, your life would change drastically.
All right, so let me ask you this because then there's some neuroplasticity. It's just like the
Of course.
habits of,
Of
where,
course.
right? So, because you can't just say, I'm just not going to have negative thoughts. I'm not going to count money. I'm not going to pay attention to time. But
Correct.
when a negative thought shows up, how do you suggest someone responds?
So understand that every thought that you have is a creation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Every single thought, and that's the whole purpose of this level of existence, is that the mind is actually the projector of the film, right?
Right.
If you think something, it starts to be created,
Yes.
right? And so when we would teach people manifestation, we would say, look, let's be materialistic. I want a new car. So you think of the new car, you envision in your head, and you see yourself getting in it and driving away. That's all you have to do to manifest, right? Well, the next day you thought, oh, maybe that's not the right car. Well, that thought that started to create itself gets popped. That balloon thought is popped and destroyed because you just changed your mind. So now the universe is waiting for you to manifest something else. So we don't understand that every time we think something negative, we are actually destroying everything that we are creating. What you can do is the minute you start to you think negative, the next day you go, well, maybe that's not the right car. You stop yourself and you say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I had an intuition that this is the car that I should have next. That's the right car. And see yourself pulling back the negative thought, destroying it being manifested, and reiterate, no, I want to make this car happen.
So this is in the realm, and I hear this continually. Tell me if I'm tracking with you that it's really our imagination. So you would actually see that negative thought, you pull it back, you destroy it, whatever verb you want to use, and then you reclaim this is what I want.
Yep.
So
One,
let's,
one, one, one trick that they told me one year was if you can't stop yourself, I'm sorry, if you can't think positive, just be neutral.
this is what I wanted to know because that's
Just
really
be
hard for
neutral.
people. That's
Correct.
so, yeah.
You wake up, you're not feeling that great. You're like, yeah, I'm happy. Just be neutral. Just say, you know what? I make no judgments today. I make no commitments today. I'm not feeling it today. I'm not happy and warm and fuzzy. So I'm just gonna lay on the sideline.
Because the question that comes up for me is maybe some of that negativity are road signs, something that you need to pay attention to, like that person isn't treating me well, or this is not the right job, or that our emotions are intel and data that
Sure,
we need to pay attention to. So you don't want to just block them. Because
sure,
why else would that goes to my second question, which is, we have been imbued with this enormous spectrum of different nuanced emotions. They're
right.
there for a reason, and sometimes negative emotions like sadness or grief, it's part of the human experience. You don't want to just block them because then it can be locked in the tissue to get to our earlier point. So
Sure.
how do we be in relationship to emotion?
So, first of all, the number one rule, no negative thought is proper.
So if I'm saying I don't like Hitler, that is dangerous that those people are doing that to those children. Those are negative thoughts.
Well, no, the negative is that, you hate people that follow Hitler. You
Okay.
despise, you condemn them, you wanna do something against them, you wanna stop them, you wanna hurt them back. Recognizing that Hitler was, just another crazy asshole,
Mhm.
is not a negative thought.
Okay.
Recognition of
'Cause it's
someone that is
discernment.
yeah, re recognition of reality is not a negative thought. Saying that things happen to me bad all the time is a negative thought.
Right.
Saying, "I think I might lose my job," can be a
Okay.
negative thought, right?
Okay. So saying or feeling like the children in Hamas,
Correct.
feeling that is not negativity, it's just the whole human experience.
It is a human
Empathy.
experience, but unfortunately, I write in my second book about living multiple levels of existence simultaneously.
Okay.
So you can connect to the children over there that are being murdered and massacred. And at the same time, if you elevate yourself, you can understand that they're actually creating a purpose right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Are they not teaching the world?
Mhm. And that's back to reincarnation.
Have they not agreed to sacrifice themselves to teach the world?
Yeah.
So you say, look, I'm only going to come into my lifetime for 3 years, but I'm going to change the world. Now, weigh that against some idiot that spent 90 years here, made millions of dollars, and didn't help anybody.
Right.
Whose lifetime is more valuable?
Right.
My own, we had our last dog. We always raised chow chows. We just love Chinese dogs,
Mhm.
probably from living there a number of years, but or having 2 lifetimes there.
I was wondering if you meant in this life or another.
2 2, yeah, unfortunately. And our last just this incredible animal. Just his name was Duke, and anyone that came near him just, like, bowed down to him, right?
Mm.
Would walk down the street off a leash, would just ignore you if "Yeah, so leave me alone." But beautiful dog, right? 3 years old, got sick, couldn't heal him, came in from the outdoors one afternoon, laid down and died,
Mm.
just in the middle of our bedroom.
Oh.
And it was heartbreaking for us. Brand new house, brand new life, and suddenly our dog has died. Really horrendous. Shook us upside down. But about a month later, he came to me in a dream, and he's standing there, and I said, "You jerk! What's the matter with you? Why did you leave?
Yeah.
You were the most incredible animal that we ever had." And blah blah. And he starts laughing at me. He's just laughing at me. I go, "Why are you laughing?" He goes, "You knew who I was when I came to you. I was a warrior dog from thousand years ago. I never lived very long. That's warrior dogs don't last. They go, they help,
Mm.
they protect, they live a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and then they're killed in battle." He said, "That's what I normally do." He said, "I gave you 3 years. I never told you I was coming for 50 years."
Yeah.
He said, "Did I not change your life? Did I not help you? Did we not have a great time?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What more would you want from me?"
Mm. And that we never really die. So here you are in
Correct. Still
communication with him.
communicating. Well, that's the other part of it, right? But how this, really connects into the healing part of it is that, and I know that you've done it yourself, is that anytime that we have a major illness or an accident, it is karmically induced.
Yeah.
And we will not get over it until we explain the why of why it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't come from some, I'm just going to absently forgive it. It doesn't work.
That's what I wanna explore with you, and I'll be
It doesn't
personal.
exist. I'll give you the example.
Okay.
I'm 6 years old, and my father takes me to the dentist. And the dentist says, I have 2 cavities. And he walks out into the waiting room and he tells my father. And my father says, well, that's BS. He's a pretty tough guy.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to teach him a lesson. So drill him without Novocaine. So I'm in the chair and he's drilling and I'm
And the
screaming.
doctor said yes
Yes, this is the 60s. In the chair, screaming, crying, right? And
to a 6-year-old.
I can see out of the corner of my eye my father in the waiting room just calmly reading a magazine, ignoring me.
Oh my god.
And I said to my brain, "I will never forgive you for this," right? So only 2 years ago, I had this infection continually show up again for the 3rd time in about a 4-year case in this tooth up here, right? I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. So I'm in the second days of being ill with it. And I said, all right, I have to take my new teachings because this is somewhat new to me. Some of this stuff is still new to me in the last few years.
Yeah.
And I said, I've got to take my teaching and just be quiet and see what it is. So I did nothing for about an hour. And out of nowhere, I remembered that dental appointment. Hadn't remembered it in 50 years.
Mm.
And so I called my father forward from the other side, who I hadn't spoken to in many years also, and he came forward. And before I could even ask the question of why did you do that to me, he says, because I loved you. And I said, oh, you're an asshole. How can you do
Mhm.
that? Come on.
Mhm.
What do you mean you love me? That's such a cop out. Where does that come from? You love me. And he very calmly looked at me and said, because I was raised by the stick. And I immediately understood that he had no other tools to shepherd me as his son
Yeah.
other than what was shown to him, which is if you hurt me, I'll stop that behavior.
Yeah.
That's how his parents threatened and, took care of him. And that's all he knew.
Yeah.
And the
So
minute that
resource.
I got that, I was able to release this. And within an hour, I came upon a remedy that I had made myself many times and started to use it. And within 3 days, it was gone forever.
Okay. I so appreciate that story. Can I share one of my
Peace.
stories?
Peace.
And the reason I want to share it is for the audience who's going, well, I don't communicate with a team of ancients, and I don't know how to communicate with loved ones departed, and I
Which we
don't know
can
the
show you.
ancient.
Like, go ahead.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So I had a cancer diagnosis when I was 27,
That's what they told me. Yeah.
melanoma, and they removed lymph nodes a couple of times from my leg,
Right.
and now I have lymphedema.
Right.
And I think I need to spend a couple of days. I mean, I'm 53 now. It's been more than a minute that I've been living with this. And I know that it's connected around my worthiness, my sense of self love, something with my mother, and
So,
boundaries.
and that's where I stop you. It's simpler than that.
It is. Okay.
What was happening when you got the first cancer?
Well, I was in graduate school at the time and I was starting to have a lot of anxiety. I wasn't in a very good relationship.
Correct. And what happened in that time that you couldn't solve, that you couldn't have the answer to why?
I don't know. I was
Well, you
thinking
do.
about this. I
Was the
do.
relationship that bad? Was your path in grad school the wrong path? One of those 2 things was killing you.
Well, the relationship was bad and I got out of the relationship.
Okay?
The path, the graduate school, no, I think it was a good path.
Okay. So stay with the relationship. Again, this is intuitive. Don't use you keep
Okay,
trying to.
my intuitiveness was I just wanted to be in a relationship, but he was not the right person for me
Okay.
at all.
Okay. So the only reason why it's still around is because the lesson that that brought you has not been accepted. And what was the lesson at that time? That you were willing to be in a relationship that was wrong just to be in a relationship.
Right.
And have we moved past that?
In certain ways, no.
Correct. So you see where I'm going. Did you find it?
Yes,
It's pretty big.
I know it is.
You get it though, right?
Yeah.
So,
We're gonna have to talk offline.
yes. But that's how easy you can find it, right?
So then if I take action, the
Mhm,
lymphedema
mhm.
will go away, or is it also then
Absolutely.
like the
100%,
medicinal?
100%. Yep. With a combination, we have to give you some, I'll send you some medicine to get rid of it because 'cause I've dealt with cancer quite a bit. Cancer's just your cells out of balance reproducing.
Mhm.
Oh, it is.
Have you dealt with lymphedema? Do you know what that is?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah, of course. I've dealt with cancers size of baseballs. My brother had 50 tumors in him, and within 4 months, we had them all gone.
Holy shit.
It's not the physical remedies. It's the energetic impact. And if you get off the path, if you would have stayed in that relationship, it would have ruined your life.
Mhm.
It would have ruined the purpose of your incarnation, which is why you got such a death-defying illness.
Yeah.
Because the universe said, okay, if this is the choice, then you're out. We make an agreement when we incarnate to spiritually advance. And we make an agreement to learn these lessons based on these lifetimes we are bringing with us. And when we decide in this incarnation, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to experience. We lose our right to be here. This is not a vacation land.
Right.
Earth and planet Earth is not for hanging out.
Yeah.
You come, you learn, you grow, and you leave. And when you stop learning and stop growing, you leave.
Mm. Oh my gosh. Okay. I can't believe it. It's already time. Speaking of time, I lost track of time, and that was another thing was because when I get really absorbed in things, I do lose track of time.
I used to do sessions and I used to have to scream at people to stop at an hour. And
Yeah.
it's why I can't. I don't see people anymore.
Okay.
They would kill
Okay.
me. They would
Ah.
line up my door for 6 miles. But please.
Okay. So this is where being a host is hard because I have so many questions. Um, Someone walks away from listening to this podcast. What are two things that you really want them to have heard that will change their lives?
One is this all of this consternation that we're experiencing, all of the division and the hate and the greed and all of what looks like the world is breaking apart. It's a reshuffling of the deck, as you said. And that is so that we can expose all the negativity that exists. The only way you can get rid of it is if you uncover it.
Mhm.
So don't think that we're being overwhelmed by the dark side. Don't think that the negativity is going to take over and collapse and ruin everything. Impossible. The reason why it's been exposed is so that we can finally eradicate it and we can be in a positive vibration for the rest of the planet. So, number one, hang tight. Next couple of years, rocky road, roller coaster, but afterwards, all worth it.
Okay.
Number one. And in that, stop paying attention to the nonsense. You read the news and these people in the just stop it.
Yeah.
You know it's not real. You know it's not truthful. Walk away from it. But the second, all illness is from experiences. All illnesses are forcing us to accept a change that we don't accept. So stop chasing remedy. I mean, you can buy my medicine all you want, but stop chasing remedies. Stop chasing the external fixes.
Because then we're bypassing.
The first fix has to come here. You have to recognize what your soul is asking you to change. If you agree to it, the illness will go away because then you'll be led to the remedy that will get rid of it, but you'll also change your path and get back to the reason why you incarnated.
Okay.
So every illness is curable. It's just an acknowledgement of the change it's pushing and asking us to do.
It's very
That is
purposeful.
where true healing happens.
Okay. Okay. David, thank you. This was extraordinary and mind-bending and so important. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.